Okay, let's dive right into this. We're going to look at a verse that's incredibly famous, but I think also incredibly misunderstood. I'm going to walk you through my own personal investigation here, and honestly, what I found, it might just change how you see this verse forever.
For centuries, this one verse has been a huge cornerstone for a very specific idea about who Jesus is. But when I started digging into the original Greek myself, I found something that, well, it challenged everything.
And it all started with just one word, a single, pretty simple looking Greek word. But that one word led me down this incredible rabbit hole of linguistic evidence, and the clues were all right there, inside the text itself. So here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll look at the verse itself. Then we'll get into the problem with that little word was. After that, we're going to follow the word's trail through the text, which leads to this idea of a future fulfillment. And finally, we'll talk about why this shift in perspective actually matters a lot. Right, so the entire traditional take on this verse, it all hangs on translating one specific Greek word as was or maybe was born. The point is, it puts the whole thing way back in the past. And this is where it gets really interesting. Look at this comparison. The Greek word we're talking about is genesthai. Now, you'll see it translated as was born sometimes, but that's a huge problem. Why? Because the author of John has a totally different word he uses for to be born, and he uses it all the time, like over a dozen times. So why would he use this other word, genesthai, just this one time? That inconsistency is what really grabbed my attention. So that led me to what felt like the most obvious next question. To figure out what genesthai means here in John 8:58, I had to go find out how the author uses that exact same word everywhere else in his book. I mean, it makes sense, right? An author is usually consistent with their vocabulary. And what I found was, well, it was fascinating. Turns out, this exact form of the word, genestheia, shows up 7 times in the Gospel of John. So my mission was clear. I had to look at the other 6 times it's used and see if there was a pattern. Okay, this right here, this is the heart of the whole thing. Look at this. In every single other instance in John's Gospel, this word points to the future. It's about to become children of God, to become healthy, before it comes to be. It's always looking forward. And get this. Even when the Apostle Paul uses the same word when talking about Abraham, he says Abraham believed he would become the father of many nations. Again, future. The only, and I mean the only place it's translated in the past tense is our verse, John 8:58. That's a huge red flag for me.
So, with all that evidence, what happens if we apply that consistent, future-focused meaning back to John 8:58? Let's see what that looks like.
The key takeaway here is pretty radical. The statement isn't about the past at all, it's about the future. Before Abraham comes to be isn't talking about his birth. It's talking about the ultimate fulfillment of all God's promises to him. His resurrection, him finally becoming the father of many nations inheriting the land. So Jesus is essentially saying, I am the Messiah right here, right now, before all of those incredible promises made to Abraham finally come to pass in the future. So my whole case really rests on these 3 pillars. First, just basic consistency. It just doesn't add up to translate this one word differently from every other time the author uses it. Second, the grammar backs it up. We have a perfect parallel in John 14:29 that uses the exact same Greek phrase, prin genesthai. And there's no debate. It's talking about the future. And finally, the context. This new reading fits the scene like a glove. Jesus is making a claim about being the Messiah, the one who's here to bring about God's future promises to Abraham. And look, this isn't just me getting hung up on a little bit of grammar. I really believe this completely changes the focus of what Jesus is saying in this incredibly powerful moment.
So, what does this change, really? Well, it reframes the whole claim. It's no longer about who Jesus was millions of years ago, but about his purpose right now. It centers the whole conversation on God's promises to Abraham, and it shines a spotlight on this big biblical hope of resurrection and a future to come. It honestly makes you wonder if maybe, just maybe, traditional theology might have pushed translators towards a certain reading. So, I'll just leave you with this question to chew on. How does reading scripture as a story that's not just about the past, but is really about the future, change what it means for you? If we start seeing this verse as a forward-looking promise instead of a backward-looking statement, man, it opens up a whole new way of looking at everything, doesn't it?